Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be 10 reasons why women chase more. Well, I've got an email from a woman that I'm going to go through with you today. And I would say when I do occasionally go and look at my YouTube comments, the one thing that I see repeated more than anything from women is, I don't agree with what you say about women chasing men more. That's like the biggest thing I see. I get emails about it, and I see those as the biggest comments that women might see a video and they get pissed off because how many times in society have they heard, it's got to be 50-50? But at the end of the day, where does that come from? That's something that somebody put out there and said, well, this is the way things should be. Now, it doesn't mean men and women shouldn't be equal, if you will, but what attracts men and women is the sexual polarity, the differences, the difference between one person being in their masculine and another person being in their feminine energy. And when I coach gay and lesbian couples, there is always one person that's more dominant in the feminine essence and the other person is dominant in the masculine essence. And wherever that sexual polarity is not there, especially like when I coach a lot of lesbian women, and what they struggle with is because obviously they're female, their bodies are female, but inside, what they've all told, thousands of them over the years that I've coached have all told me the same thing, that they feel like a man in a woman's body. And they're always, without a doubt, the ones that are more dominant in the masculine essence, all 100% of the time date very feminine women who obviously also happen to be lesbians. And where they typically tend to struggle is when they act too much like women instead of acting more like men, because just like in heterosexual relationships, when the sexual polarity becomes where it's 50-50, if you will, where there's one person that's not really dominant or feminine, they're both kind of vacillating back and forth, the sexual attraction and desire literally evaporates. And that's why when I do phone sessions, I get such great emails back from these women when I talk to them about how just a few subtle tweaks and changes, getting them, whether they're more feminine, to get them to act more naturally feminine, or to get them to act more masculine and be in more of a leadership role. I mean, it's literally instantaneous, the result that they see in their relationship. And it's the same thing, obviously, because most of my clients are heterosexual dudes. If I got a guy that's kind of vacillating back and forth, being unsure of himself, and I get him 100% focused in his masculine energy, which is dominant natural essence, and help him identify the parts where he's maybe exhibiting too many feminine qualities, same thing. It's a night and day instantaneous change with either their girlfriends or their wives or women that they were trying to attract, but things have been kind of going sideways. And as soon as they get in their natural essence, the problems just kind of evaporate and they go away. It's really a beautiful thing. That's one of the things I love about what I do, is helping people understand that. But everybody watching this video, whether you're a man or a woman, gay, straight, lesbian, bisexual, doesn't matter. You're either going to be naturally more dominantly feminine or more dominant in the masculine essence. And again, it's the differences between the two that creates the attraction. So I came up with about 10 different things that I want to go, because this is a question I get asked so much. And like I said, the biggest thing that I see women say is, like, I don't agree that women should chase more. But it's when I start talking to them and asking them questions, and you'll see this woman's email, she doesn't like it when guys chase too much or over pursue, because it totally turns them off. It's finding that healthy balance, because what I see is a lot of women hear me say that and they automatically presuppose that I'm saying women do 100% of it and guys make no effort at all. And that's not what I'm teaching. But there's a natural progression, whereas in the normal courtship between a man and a woman, the guy starts the courtship. He starts pursuing in the beginning. He's the one that gets the number, that sets the date, that makes the plans. And as a woman starts to fall and become more attractive to him, she becomes more invested, she starts to feel safe and comfortable, and she wants to reach out and bond and connect more, and then she'll start pursuing him. And it's just a natural process. Every girlfriend I've ever had, every woman I've ever dated, they all behave this way, and I've coached thousands of men and women all over the world, every single year, and I see the same patterns over and over and over and over and over again. You may have heard me say that when you understand this, it's literally becomes as predictable as the sun coming up in the east and setting in the west. So I have a quote that I wrote on this topic, and then we're going to go through her email and the 10 different reasons why women typically tend to pursue more. Even if they don't in the beginning, over time, they always do. Even the ones that say they don't like it or they don't agree with it or they want it to be 50-50. So the quote says, "Feminism was originally a great idea and movement to make sure women got voting rights and were treated as equals and teammates. However, over the last 50 plus years, feminism has become unbalanced, too aggressive, and focused on tearing men down, neutering, and emasculating them. Way too many TV shows and movies portray men as bumbling, weak, stupid, dishonest, feminine, and girly, while the women are increasingly portrayed as being confident, aloof, smart, masculine, and manly. This has blurred the natural and innate masculine and feminine gender roles and caused unbalanced sexual polarity as men and women struggle to be who they really are, have healthy relationships, and adapt to women being in positions of power and leadership in their careers and home lives. The solution is for men and women to understand the difference between masculine and feminine energy, how this creates sexual polarity and attraction, and act according to their own dominant natural essence." This is one of the reasons why so many women read my book as well, because the benefit for even though my book was written ideally for guys, to help guys, because quite frankly, if you get a group of women together and you ask them, they'll all tell you that guys need the most help. But obviously what's interesting is 95% of the self-help books on dating and relationships are all bought by women, and only about 5% are bought by men. Isn't that interesting? Another reason why women tend to know a lot more about dating and relationships than the average guy does, and why most of the time they tend to have the upper hand. So from a woman's perspective, being able to understand the ins and outs of my book, what creates attraction, what turns women off, the average woman that reads it can understand herself more clearly and what she's naturally going to be inclined to do. And plus, as a woman going through it, you can see, based on your own previous relationship, you can see those same kinds of patterns. And so what it does, it helps you determine when you start dating a new guy whether the guy really gets it or he doesn't. Because the average woman really they have a set of what society has conditioned them to think and believe that they should want, and then there's the way things really are. And for most women, at least my clients over the years, it's enlightening for them to better understand why certain guys really turned them on, why they felt like they had chemistry or a spark, if you will, and other guys who were like perfect on paper, they felt nothing for. So let's go through her email. She says, "Hi, Coach Corey. I stumbled across your videos over a year ago, and I've also purchased your book, How to Be a 3% Man or Woman, which is great information. I agree with almost everything you've talked about, except the part where you said women should do most of the chasing. I find that is not true in my case, as I think I always reciprocate the actions and efforts of my man." Well, the reality, like I said, if you've read the book, and all the thousands of men and women I've coached all over the world, even the ones that say initially they disagree with it, if you look at how they behave and how they show up, and even as I go through her email here, you're going to see that there's things that she believes should be a certain way, but yet if you look at what she finds attractive in men and what turns her off, she says she wants guys to be a certain way, but yet guys that have exhibited those behaviors, she doesn't want anything to do with. I know I also don't like it when a man over pursues, but I have always sort of maintained a healthy balance there, or so you assumed. So here that's the 10 reasons I want to go through before that I've written down before I go through the rest of her email. And so responding to her, well, I don't agree that women should do most of the pursuing. In the beginning, it's not that way. As a matter of fact, with most women, the guy's doing all the pursuing in the first usually 2 to 3 weeks. And as a woman starts to reach out, the guy can just start to back off and wait to hear from her. And when he does hear from her, he assumes she wants to see him, and he makes the next date. And when you do it from that perspective, it's a natural transition. It's not about being a robot. You're just looking at what she's doing, and as she becomes more attracted, she becomes more enthusiastic about you. She becomes more excited. She wants to spend more time with you. She wants to talk to you more. She wants to text you more. She wants to send you little pictures and messages more through text and different messaging apps. It just happens naturally, and here's some of the reasons why. Number 1, feminine energy is about bonding, connecting, opening up to receive love, relationships, commitments, etc. That's just part of the natural feminine essence, which is another reason why so many, if you look at TV and the movies, it's just constantly pounding this meme into our heads that the guy's got to pursue, act like a stalker, and drag a woman kicking and screaming to the altar and get a ring on her finger because somebody else might come along and steal her from you. And when you do that in real life, when you're focused on the commitment, when you're focused on locking a woman down before she's emotionally ready, she's going to give you the let's just be friends speech. I need space. I'm unsure. I'm confused. I'm not ready for a relationship yet. Those are the typical responses that you're going to get. And as I teach in my book, a man's job in the courtship is to create an opportunity for sex to happen. Hang out, have fun, hook up. When guys get focused, especially in the very beginning, on locking a girl down to a commitment and talking about their future and relationships and marriage and all these things, it's going to cause a woman to back off because 97% of the guys act this way, and it scares women. It doesn't make them feel safe and comfortable. The guys end up coming off as needy, desperate, controlling, insecure. Number 2, women typically say about 8,000 words per day, and men about 2,000 words. Number 3, men who struggle in long-term relationships typically are all guilty of no longer courting their women properly and take them for granted. All the guys, I'd say 99.99% of the guys that are married, living with girlfriends, or they're in long-term relationships, that's what happens. As guys, we're driven to achieve and accomplish, and the average guy, it's something that happens slowly over time, over many months and many years. They get more focused on being a provider, earning a paycheck, bringing the money home, and they become less and less focused on dating and courting. Because without a goal, without an objective, they just naturally will gravitate back to their mission and purpose and often start neglecting their women, and they no longer date and court them, which obviously causes women to feel like he doesn't care about them anymore. If he really loved me and he really cared about me, he would take me out on dates. And women will typically say, instead of saying, it'd be nice if you took me out on a date at least once a week, instead of telling them logically and explicitly, the average woman tends to go, we don't spend enough time together. And the guy goes, thinking like a logical guy, he goes, wait a minute, we live together. We see each other in the morning, we see each other at night, we were together around the house all weekend. But what she's really just trying to say is, take me out, make a date like you used to when we were dating. Make me feel special, wine me, dine me. The courtship never ends. It's actually a chapter in my book. Number 4, women tend to end relationships 75% of the time. In other words, women are less inclined to tolerate a poor quality relationship than men are. And again, I look at that, that's just more evidence. The woman's focused on the relationship and the quality of it, and if things don't change, eventually she's going to pull the ripcord and get the fuck out. 75% of the time, women are the ones that end it. Number 5, women solve their problems by talking about them. They are naturally driven to reach out more so they can talk with the person who they love and trust the most. Usually their dads as little girls, and their male lovers when they become adults. I did an article several years ago called Why Women Prefer to Chase Men. And on the article version of this video on my website, I'll have a link to that. Or you can Google Corey Wayne, Why Women Prefer to Chase Men. I also think it's part of one of the essential fundamentals on my YouTube channel, also on my website. But that's a really important one to read. And I talk about how that epiphany came to me one time. It's probably going back 15, 16 years ago with a girlfriend of mine, and just watching how her little daughter was interacting with me. It was really a cool epiphany. Number 6, women tend to be more affectionate and touch more than men do. Again, that's part of bonding, connecting. Number 7, women are natural nurturers and usually are more active in raising a baby, breastfeeding, changing diapers, etc. than men are. Just the way it is in most cases. Not all cases, but most of them. Number 8, men are naturally and instinctively driven to achieve and accomplish, since this embodies masculine energy. And again, guys, we're just naturally focused on this. And this is why a lot of guys make the mistake over time of getting lazy and complacent, when especially like when you're living together, you got kids, you got a family. The dating just eventually comes to a halt, and you basically become roommates. Because the guy's no longer in, I got a quarter, I got to get her to fall in love with me and get her to marry me and all these things. Once that's happened, to him, hey, I won her over. She's mine. I got a ring on her finger. We got a 30-year mortgage. She ain't going nowhere. Number 9, women are the ones who tend to dress sexy, wear makeup, shave their legs, their armpits, their mustache, get nails done, etc. to attract men who are more visual. There's a reason. Guys aren't the ones putting the skimpy dresses on and stuff, or the makeup, or spending 3 hours in a hair salon. I think there's some guys out there that do shit like that, but it's mostly the women that are focused on making themselves really visually appealing. Again, us guys are visual creatures. That's what, ooh, wow, look at her. That's what gets us interested to go over and approach. Number 10, men who try too hard to get attention, over-pursue, or who are focused on proving themselves to women are expressing a lack of confidence and unbalanced masculine energy. This ruins sexual polarity and turns women off. So let's get back to her email. She says, I find that most men who don't make the effort either by calling or keeping in touch shouldn't expect the same in return from me. I feel I'm a great catch and of great value to any man, and vice versa. Well, that's healthy to look at it that way. And the bottom line is, if somebody cares, they'll make an effort. But if somebody doesn't care, they won't make any effort at all. The idea is, you, as a man or a woman, you got to look at how much effort is the other person putting into your relationship. And if they're not, you got to be willing to ask them in a loving way what you would like them to do more of, what you appreciate and value, as opposed to making them feel like they're wrong. Oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. Which men and women both tend to do. They tend to complain about what the other person is doing, instead of saying, hey, you know what, I really liked it when you made the dinner plans last Friday and you took me to a place I'd never been before, or that place I mentioned 2 months ago, you remembered it and you surprised me with it on my birthday, or our anniversary, or Valentine's Day, or Groundhog Day, or whatever it happens to be. There are a lot of angles I'd like to talk with you about and have a conversation, which I'll book a coaching session. I like the way you think. I was wondering if you ever considered the social environmental conditionings of men and women with regards to relationships on a general scale, i.e. in Europe, places like France. The men tend to be very weak and behave like babies, while the women are the forerunners of everything. Generalization based on my observation. Well, again, you can see part of the feminist movement and the influence of making, I mean, you look back at what happened during World War II. They tended to be more passive. And when you're passive and you display weakness, you invite bullies to come in and kick your ass. And unfortunately, that we all know what happened if you studied history. But I see that a lot. I see it in the United States. I see it in all Western societies. We're all watching the same TV shows. We're all watching the same movies. We're seeing that same meme across the board. And a lot of ways, just like I shared in the quote in the beginning of the video, that pendulum of feminism is swung too far to the right, if you will. And it's just become too militant to the point where it's just constantly emasculating men. I mean, with any successful TV show, TV comedy that you see, they're all the same way. The men are bumbling, fucking stupid idiots. They're dishonest. It's the same crap over and over, and yet the women act very masculine and manly. And if you're growing up in a household where one or both your parents is always away, they're working, or maybe you grow up in a single-parent household, where else are you going to learn? You're going to learn from the kids in the neighborhood, and you're going to learn from what you see on TV and the movies. And when you see that over and over, thousands and thousands of times, from the time you're a kid until you grow up, we tend to act a way. Remember, whatever you observe, you're going to participate in. So you might just think it's a TV show, but the bottom line is when you watch that kind of shit over and over and over and over again, it changes the way you think. It changes your expectations. And if you watch how movies and TVs are, everything is all about anchoring you to certain emotions. Like you look at the news. I mean, the news always has some negative, painful thing that they're anchoring you to. It's the same thing with a television show. So whenever you're watching a TV show or the news, just think about the emotions that are being elicited inside you. And whatever you're feeling, that's what you're going to be anchored to. It's like when I like in my book, I talk about whatever a guy is causing a woman to feel when she's on a date with him is what she's going to associate with being with him. That's why talking about exes or relationships that didn't work out or just negative things, you cause her to feel negative emotions, that's what she's going to associate with you, which is not going to cause her to be attracted. Also, from your perspective, I see that men are trying extra hard to get women, whereas in my part of the world, it seems to be women trying extra hard to get men. What's interesting, if 50, 60, 70 years ago, all the movies, that's what you saw. The women were always scheming and plotting to get a guy's attention and get him to settle down and get married. And when you look at what's on TV and the movies today, it's a complete opposite of that. Somehow it is perceived to be a great thing if a woman can catch a man, as long as he has a dick, keep him, and get the ring. I think differently, and I believe that the man should be just as pleased to have you in his life as the woman. I totally agree with that. The man is not doing the woman a favor by marrying the woman, is he? Well, the idea is you shouldn't be looking for somebody else to complete you. You should be looking for somebody to share your completeness with. Who wants to be trapped by a beta male anyways? I am from Britain and currently about to complete my PhD. Most people find me intimidating when they realize I'm getting my doctorate. I usually don't lead with that statement, and I consider myself a feminine woman and an alpha female, or is it a contradiction? Well, it's like you look at different women. The idea is masculine energy is purpose, drive, mission, succeeding, accomplishing, breaking through barriers, and as a woman, you have to be able to be comfortable being in your masculine energy, achieving, getting a PhD, being a leader, being a manager, starting your own business. But you'll notice, like, you look at somebody like a Hillary Clinton. Is she more masculine or is she more feminine? Versus a high-achieving female, somebody like an Eva Longoria, who's very successful, has her own production company, but very feminine, very girly. Or you look at a Gina Carano, who's the MMA fighter. If you didn't know she was an MMA fighter, if you've ever seen her when she's done any talk shows or interviews, she's very girly, looks beautiful, all dressed up with her dresses. She sounds very shy, very submissive. But when you see her in the ring, you know that she can totally kick your fucking ass and has no fear of anybody. And someone like her, someone like Eva Longoria does a really great job of moving back and forth between being in their masculine and being in their feminine. We all men and women have masculine and feminine energy as part of our essence. It's just which is more dominant. And Eva Longoria, Gina Carano do a really great job of vacillating back and forth in those energies as they need to based upon their careers or just being a girl and being themselves. It's very sexy, very attractive. Someone like Hillary, I mean, she acts more like a man than she does a woman. That's just the way it is. But I'm not getting into her relationship with Bill because everybody pretty much knows what that is. However, I'm always forced to go into my masculine when dealing with the rest of the population, which falls into your 97% category. I'd probably be the pretty blonde girl in the office that you'd pass by and walk and ask to speak with a mechanical engineer, only to find that it was me. In my family, my mother is more ambitious, has foresight, is a go-getter, which my sister and I adopt. While the men in our family are pretty much go-getters when they are out and about in the world, but not at home. So you come from an environment where the women at home are in their masculine energy. And so that's going to be really, it's great for your career, but when you're dating, obviously you like guys that are alpha males, but you grew up in an environment where you're in essence are around beta males in the home environment. And so how that's going to affect you is that's going to cause you to at least initially be attracted to guys that exhibit that kind of energy because that's what you're emotionally conditioned to expect and that's what you're used to. It's understanding how that influences you. When you look at somebody like our president, Barack Obama, he grew up with his father wasn't really involved in his life, so he was raised by his mother. And if you look at the dynamic between he and his wife definitely an alpha female. But he's more of a passive beta male, unsure of himself, draws a red line, then he comes back from that, not real sure of himself. Or you look at somebody like a Jay-Z, who he's an alpha male, his wife is an alpha female, obviously, and they both are very successful, but Beyonce, all very beautiful, very feminine, and she's able to bounce back and forth between masculine and feminine energy, unlike somebody like Hillary. They seem to leave the responsibilities of getting things done for the women. I have contended with this for years, which is evident through my frustrations. My past relationships have been very different from each other because I change and I make adjustments and I correct mistakes from previous relationships. Most times, my exes seem to want to keep in touch with me even after years of us not being together. One thing that they always say is how I've helped made their lives better. Being go-getters and business conscious and regret letting me go or treating me the way they did. I had an ex call out of the blue to apologize to me after 8 years after our breakup for the way he treated me, which made me break up with him in the first place. Well, it sounds like you were more dating beta males than you were alpha males, especially when you got one that you broke up with 8 years ago and he's still reaching out to you, still wanting to be friends with you in that way. So that just tells me on that little tidbit of your experience there that you tend to date guys that are more beta, which is very similar to what you grew up with at home. I just turned 31 years old and I'm looking to meet an alpha male as I find that beta men do not hold my attention for long and neither am I attracted to them. Most of the alpha males I meet are either married or in their 40s. I also find most men my age to be very childish and not manly enough for me. Well, women typically are about 5, 7, 8 years ahead of where guys are maturity-wise. That's why a lot of younger women prefer to date older guys, and they don't like dating guys their own age because they don't want to wait for them to grow up or figure it out yet. You also should look at where are you meeting these guys, because if you're a high-achieving alpha female, where do the alpha males hang out? In other words, it's not so much about going out and chasing or finding what you're looking for. It's about becoming a person of value, becoming the kind of person that you want to attract. In other words, your life should be filled up with activities and things that you personally love doing, because it's in doing those things that you're going to meet other like-minded people. But for you, obviously, my book can be a big help, that just based on what you've shared about guys you've dated in the past that tend to be more beta, and it sounds like you're the one without pretty much all those guys, you've been the one that's dumped them and gotten rid of them, especially if they're all trying to keep in contact with you after you got rid of them. So where my book can help you is to recognize when you start to see that beta male behavior, instead of sticking around and hoping it's going to get better, you should be able to recognize which guys get it and which guys don't. So when you recognize that a guy doesn't get it, you can move on instead of wasting 6 months, a year, 2 years, however long you typically tend to stay in your relationships with somebody that just can't be what you want. For men and women both, that's a really tough thing, because when you like somebody and you're attracted to somebody, we all project our fantasy of what we want onto them. And then we ignore the reality of what they're really like, and it's not until after the honeymoon period, usually 6 months to a year, until we've gone through that and that's worn off, that we really are able, with a clear head and clear mind and clear heart, to see what this person is really like. And if you tend to keep attracting the same kind of people, then you have to recognize that you have to get better at pre-qualifying people, if you will. I do not lead with the PhD card. I've always practiced the art of letting go, and I am also a very spiritual person. Friends and family can testify to me being a gentle, warm, and very friendly person, sometimes too flirty. I am also one of the most humble people you will ever know. I love to have fun, and I have a great time, and when it's time to work, I give it my best. I do not apologize for being me, PhD and all, but I want a man that can stand up to me and with whom I can relax and know he is leading us somewhere good. So even though you said you don't really like it, because what it sounds like has happened is that you start dating guys, and you'll see that with the betas. They'll do a lot of things right in the beginning, but once they feel they got you, they no longer do those things. When you really care about somebody, when you're balanced, you want, because remember, the whole purpose of all relationships is you go there to give. You want to make the other person happy. And if you're constantly dating and ending up with guys that are beta and passive, what that tells me is you're just letting guys stick around in your life way too long than they should. So you got to get quicker at getting rid of them and keep, because think about it. If you think about the time and the emotional energy that's invested in somebody, dating them, spending time together, and then getting to the point where you realize that you don't want to stay in that relationship long term. 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then after you break up, you're going to want some time to be alone and get used to being single again. So it's just like in business, when you make a bad hire, when you hire the wrong person, that person can set you back for 6 months or longer. Not only do you lose all that time, because it usually takes you 2 to 3 months to find out whether that person ain't going to work out, and then it might take 2 or 3 months where you try to change things and get them to fit in or change, and then after 6 months you realize it just ain't working out. So you got all the time you invested in them, you got all the money that you paid them, and then the stuff that you hired them to do, they didn't get done. So you literally piss away 6 months of your business life. And as a business owner, you want to become really good at hiring people, and when they're not good at getting things done or accomplishing the objectives that you want, you got to be able to fire them. It's the same thing in your personal life. And what I see across the board with men and women is that all of us, we let people stick around in our lives that just shouldn't be there. And that's just a fact of life. But as you get older and you have more experiences, you get better at it, and you're willing to put up with less bullshit, and you'll get out quicker. Most of the time. People that tend to learn and focus on getting better at this stuff do it. Other people constantly attract the same kind of person over and over throughout the decades, and it becomes part of their story. Why do I always attract the same kind of people? Why does this always happen to me? And they don't learn anything. They get no new information, and therefore nothing changes. Their approach never changes, and yet they're surprised that they keep ending up with the same kind of person. My question is, am I doing something wrong in terms of my sexual polarity and how to maintain my femininity against the rest of the 97%ers? Well, for you, it would be helpful to understand how the fact that you had a more passive beta male father at home, you're naturally going to feel more comfortable with guys like that versus had you have grown up in an environment where your dad was the alpha male and he was the king of the household. So you're not attracted to those beta males because the sexual polarity is lacking. And so to recognize that because of the type of father you grow up with, when you meet somebody and he exhibits those kind of qualities that your father did, you're going to make excuses for him because you're just naturally inclined to feel that way. I mean, you're 31 now. So obviously you've had 31 years of being emotionally conditioned to expect men to be that kind of way. And if you want to change that going forward, you've got to recognize which guys exhibit it and have got their shit together and which guys don't. And the bottom line is you're spending time with guys that you need to be hitting the eject button way sooner than you are. So I think that's a good email. Again, I get asked that question all the time, and it's the biggest thing that the biggest complaint, if I could say there was a complaint or comment that women have or they get butthurt about, it was if they just come to my YouTube channel and found a video when I talk about how women tend to pursue more and why they pursue more. So hopefully that answers your questions. And if you'd like to get my help personally, you can go to my website, click the products tab at the top of your screen, and follow the instructions for booking whichever coaching option works for you. And I will talk to you soon.